Hi guys, so a very shouty Chris Philp, who is a minister at the Home Office, was responding to a question from the SNP about asylum seekers and their accommodation in disused army barracks. So let's hear what the question was and how Chris Philp, the minister, responded.
Let's go to SNP spokesperson in the north with Stuart C. McDonald. Stuart C.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The repurposing of disused army barracks to house asylum seekers is proving a disaster and a disgrace. And what is worse, the leaked impact assessment shows this dreadful policy was justified by wild notions that proper support and accommodation could undermine public confidence in the asylum system. In short, the Home Office was pandering to gutter politics. So will the Home Office apologise for suggesting people in the UK oppose decent support and care for asylum seekers and close these barracks urgently?
Well, there is no apology due. As I just said, these barrack accommodation units were previously used by the brave men and women of our armed services. They were good enough for the armed services, and they are certainly more than good enough for people who have arrived in this country seeking.
Okay, so what he's trying to do here is he's trying to reach out to the racists and the far right. You know, how dare these asylum seekers complain about this accommodation? If it was good enough for the military, it's more than good enough for these spongers. You know, well, of course he's not saying the word sponger, but we know what he's implying. The problem is, well, there are a number of problems. One of the problems with the accommodation is that, yes, it was used by the military in the past, decades in the past in some cases. Some of these barracks haven't been used for up to 20 years or more. So they're not fit for purpose. But let's park that for a moment. The bigger issue here, of course, is the pandemic. Let's hear what else he had to say.
Asylum, we fully comply with all of the relevant guidelines. In response to his question about this country's stance towards asylum seekers, we are now spending, getting on for £1 billion a year, accommodating asylum seekers, a record that I think is stands comparison to any country in Europe.
Okay. What? Let's just hear what he said again.
Question about this country's stance towards asylum seekers. We are now spending, getting on for £1 billion a year, accommodating asylum seekers.
Getting on to £1 billion a year. Now, it's not £1 billion, because if it was £1,000,000,001, he would say over £1 billion. So getting on for £1 billion. I don't know how much that is, but it's less than £1 billion. And he said it's the most in any country in Europe. Well, German government, this is from last year. It says German government plans to spend between, no, this is from 2016 to 2020. The German government plans to spend 93.6 billion euros on refugees by the end of 2020. This was from 2016. So 4 into 93 is more than 1. Okay.
A record that I think is stands comparison to any country in Europe, indeed any country around the world.
Any country around the world? Really? Are you sure about that, Chris?
So there is no apology due, and certainly none will be made.
Very, very shouty man. I don't know if he's on something or if he's just very aggressive. Is part of his nature.
Right. Let's have the second question from Stuart C. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The sad fact is that this policy is undermining the UK's reputation as a welcoming place. But what's almost as bad as the impact assessment are these Home Office claims that people who criticise use of the barracks are insulting our armed forces. Because, Mr. Speaker, it's the Home Office that insults our soldiers by using them as cover for these disgraceful policies. Former senior military legal advisor Lieutenant Mercer has agreed that it is wholly inappropriate to house asylum seekers in disused army barracks. This treatment is nothing more than naked hostility to very vulnerable people. So he won't listen to me. Will he listen to Lieutenant Colonel Mercer, a host of respected medical organisations, and close these barracks quickly?
Tell the honourable gentleman what would make closure of these barracks a lot easier if we had more councils in Scotland, other than only Glasgow, who would accept dispersed accommodation. It's that sort of thing.
So I thought there wasn't a problem. Chris was saying that there isn't a problem, but, you know, these people should be happy that they're in these army barracks. That the army barracks are good, are better than they deserve, because he says that the armed forces used to be using them. So why is he saying that, well, if we want to reduce the number of people in the army barracks, then the parts of Scotland should open up? I thought there was no problem. But this is all a distraction, because the real issue, of course, is the conditions within these barracks. So in some cases, the barracks are old and they're not up to scratch to be used to house asylum seekers. But even if we allow the racists to say what they want, let's focus on the pandemic itself, okay? So even if the racists were right, and these people don't even deserve to be in a barracks, even an old barracks, shouldn't they be happy? The problem is the pandemic. This is from the British Medical Journal. This is a blog from the British Medical Journal on the 8th of February this year. It said, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought particular challenges for people seeking asylum in the UK. Already with poor health outcomes, torture survivors and other asylum seekers' vulnerability to COVID-19 is increased due to ethnicity, poverty, physical and psychological health conditions often relate to past torture and constant stress and anxiety about being returned to the country from which they fled. It goes on to say about some of the conditions. So since September of 2020, the government has been housing up to 700 asylum seekers in disused army barracks, blaming the pandemic for lack of available housing in the community. Single men are sleeping 28 plus to a room in bunk beds separated by sheets and sharing bathroom facilities. Once again, the racists would be happy with this, but this is not the type of conditions that you want to have people in during a friggin' pandemic. It goes on to say, recently a COVID-19 outbreak was reported in the Napier barracks in Kent, currently housing around 400 asylum seekers. The number reported to have tested positive is 120 and rising. This is not the approach you should have when you have people in close proximity to each other. You need to have a different approach. The Tories' approach is just stick them all in the old army barracks that isn't being used anymore and forget about it. But there is a pandemic raging at the moment, and of course, even if we just bought into the racism and just said, look, who cares about these people? There are providers of services to these people where these are British people, if you want to call them, coming in to deliver food or services to these individuals, and they risk spreading the pandemic as well. It goes on to say in this report, so the COVID-19 guidance for providers of accommodation for asylum seekers states that accommodation providers should identify single rooms with ensuite bathroom facilities for all residents, which should be suitable for self-isolation. If single occupancy accommodation is not available, accommodation where cohorting is possible should be provided. Of course, it makes sense that it's not going to be possible to have everyone completely self-isolating, but you need to understand there is a pandemic at the moment. The normal rules do not apply.
Which puts pressure on our accommodation estate. Thanks to the generosity of our approach, the number of people we're accommodating has gone up from 48,000 to 61,000 during the pandemic, because we have taken a thoughtful and protective approach. That's the right thing to do, and we stand by it.
Very, very jolly person. This is just distraction, once again. Talk about something else. We're doing a great job. As long as we tell people we're doing a great job, and stick in a bit of red meat there for the knuckle draggers, then everything will be fine. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?